What's up guys, it's Punchy, and today we got a new Deepwoken weekly update with some interesting changes and stuff to explore. There's a bunch of well-requested improvements alongside some new content for everyone to mess around with, and that's cool. Last time we got the entirely new Twinblade weapon class alongside the Imperator's Edge legendary, but for this update, it's a bit different. To get the most out of these updates and truly see what's new, I always recommend hopping in the game and testing out all the goodies for yourself. So, as always, make sure to like and subscribe since we're so close to 100k subs, and let's get right into it. Starting off with a new mantra, we have Shade Step. This mantra is for Shadow, and its main purpose is for initiating combat with a little bit of mobility and stealth. So with this option, we turn into a small cloud of darkness, pop up near players, and proc some Shadow to slow them down and drain their ether. I don't really know how crazy this option is, it doesn't do that good of damage, but I think it might be interesting and fun to mess around with. With some new weapon additions to the Twinblade class, we have a few to check out. Alongside the normal scale splitter, we also have the new alloyed option with a darker and sleeker design. Besides the visual changes, the stats have also gone up when it comes to damage and swing speed, so if you like this critical, I definitely recommend it. Further upon this, the already existing Crescendo Twinblade has received some quality of life updates for its critical. So in this patch, you can now cancel the multi-hitting slash, which wasn't an option before, so it's a little bit less punishable. Back with even more upgrades to previously added content from last week, we have another critical coming to the legendary Imperator's Edge. It was truly limited beforehand with the single crit, but now it's even better with a new running critical. So by doing this technique, we get a piercing stab, releasing a single projectile shot that stuns targets and does decent damage, and it can also multi-hit. This attack might be kinda crazy as it is, but now this weapon should have better options to play with. Outside of the mode, you deal less damage and have less hyper armor with the running critical, but in the enlightened mode, it buffs up both of these aspects. Onto some new mantra changes and new mantra sparks. We first got to start it off with something for Flame Charm. In today's update, we also have the reversal spark for Flaming Scourge, and it's pretty cool. So in the normal basic use of this mantra, we toss players into the air and slam them back down for additional damage, and now this has kinda changed. In this update, it pulls players close instantly and slams them down without any sort of upward momentum, so there's less time to escape. Honestly, it might be faster but do less damage, but I think that's the entire point. Also, we got a small but massive change to Ice Eruption's Round Spark, making it do damage. On spawning the massive ring of ice, you'll notice spikes around the entrance which deal damage on placement. It's kinda hard to space this out, but if the spawned ice hits players, it's gonna do decent damage and stun them. Moving forward, with even more information about our builds, we can now view our stealth stat in the menu. So when sitting at a campfire, it's possible to see the percentage of stealth which reduces enemy and monster detection. It's fairly small, but appreciated. Added in this update, we also got some talents to discuss, mostly situated around Fortitude. So with a new card in the Bulwark tree, we have a talent called Down to Your Level. Simply, while you have a speed debuff on your character, your M1s slow your enemies down for 2 seconds to equal out the fight. Honestly, this is a great way to combat lockdown builds and flip it on them if you have high fortitude, and it sounds pretty solid to run. Also, we have another slowing Fortitude talent called Dancing Guard. Pairing an opponent and then pairing somebody else applies slow to that target, which is pretty crippling. I think this is probably going to be good during large scale ganks where there's a lot of people and you're fighting a bunch. Moving forward, we have another with Knuckle Guard. Hitting dazed enemies grants you 10% posture resistance for everything for a short duration. Maintaining your block bar should be pretty easy as long as you're applying pressure in combat. Next up, we have Defensive Reprisal. Being flourished by somebody grants the user 10% posture resistance for 5 seconds, which is great if you want to get, off a wall or something. And finally, with the last, we have Mythic Stability. If you're a fan of Monad Studios' older game, Rogue Lineage, you might understand this one. Like, those who know, right? Anyway, you gain immunity to a ton of different executions at low HP, which is kinda crazy in the current state of the game. So instead of dying to an attack which would pop you, we resist it instead. Moving on to combat changes, let's take a look at posture. So in in this update, it's received some changes all around the board, and yeah, these are important. For starters, the maximum amount of posture damage you can possibly do with a single ability is 1.75 times its initial posture value. Also, to clarify, if multipliers get involved, once you reach 1.5 times your initial posture damage for that move, it will diminish or lower in improvement by 50%. For example, if you had any attack that dealt 2 times or double the amount of posture it normally does, it would decrease and cap out to 1.75 times the posture damage instead of double. It's confusing to me, but overall, posture damage and posture defense diminish as multipliers begin to stack on top. With a pretty sizable change, we have some new abilities in game which have been adjusted to better hit targets. If that sounds pretty crazy, I think it is, but this is beneficial. First, we'll start with the Blood-Tied Trident, a unique option with a pulling projectile crit. Before this update, throwing this critical could happen anywhere you like with specific mouse aim or directly where your camera was facing when shift locked. Luckily, it's been improved. This does not mean the critical itself is locking onto targets, but here's just a comparison. So before this update, shift locking even while facing targets would aim directly at camera placement, which also means it could hit the floor. But now in this update, even if you look down in front of a target, it should throw your shot directly at the enemy. Another hollow-tied weapon also got this treatment, the Putrid Eden Staff. Instead of shooting downward, it launches right at our enemy, and something worth mentioning is that it also spaces out the orb shots, which all used to fire at the same time. Moving forward, another mantra that follows this design philosophy is Brachial Spear. So for a while now, this thing has been buffed over and over and over, but firing straight is extremely powerful with a mantra like this. Next up, with a decently small but appreciated update, we have now gained better pass down potential through our Echo upgrades. When you finally wipe your character, you could pass down loot for your future slots, but the maximum upgrade for Echoes was a small and restrictive count of 2 bonus pass downs. Now, in this patch, it has doubled to 4 extra pass downs, allowing for a maximum count of 6 items which you can pass down to future slots. With another kinda crazy change, we have an optimization update to a mantra that might fix a lot of issues found in the current Deepwoken. For some weird reason, the Ice Carve mantra had very high memory leaks and broke performance in servers, and this was finally fixed, so I guess we'll see better gameplay. Now, it's about time to move on to some bonus balancing, highlighting a bunch of weapon changes. In this patch, the Kyrsieger has finally met its demise, hopefully, with a giant adjustment coming to Hyper Armor. This weapon critical allowed the user to charge up a guard-breaking beam within Hyper Armor for 3 full seconds, which made it very difficult to cancel without true stun. Regardless, the Hyper Armor duration has been cut massively, allowing this option to finally have counterplay. So, if you see somebody charging, just slap them out of the windup. Moving on to another weapon with broken true Hyper Armor, we have some nerfs to the newly alloyed Forge Greathammer. Before this update, the Forge Hammer could be activated mid-stun and dealt its damage during this, but now it should be fixed. Additionally, it seems the Hyper Armor frame duration has been halved, which should result in a substantial weapon nerf. Next up, the Boltcrusher Legendary also got a sizable nerf and I guess fix with its criticals. For some reason, the Boltcrusher running critical would deal damage on its second hit, even if the first was dodged, which was also removed in this patch. Secondly, a funny and interesting mechanic, the normal Boltcrusher critical dealt double damage scaling if you had the surge path on your build, and this was also removed. Surprisingly, it was intentional, and yeah, this weapon has been dropped a little bit. And finally, that's it. So, as always, make sure to check out the weekly Battle Royale and win some games with your friends. If you want to see even more exclusive update content just like this, make sure to like and subscribe so we can hit 100k subs. We're super close. Anyway, thanks again. It's punch-in time.